We're delighted to welcome you this afternoon on Friday lunchtime talk from the Fore. And for those of you who don't know who we are, I thought I'd just very briefly introduce us. So we are a charity that is on a mission to turbocharge exceptional small charities and social enterprises. We have a portfolio of over 500 really inspiring, really exciting, highly innovative charities and social enterprises that are doing enormous amounts of good work. And I know that a lot of them are joining us today for this seminar. So we are delighted to welcome all of you. What we do as a charity is that we provide funding and skills support to exceptional charities, particularly small charities that have got huge potential and scalable solutions. And the reason why we do this is because we believe that there are huge global challenges out there. It's hard to disagree that inequality, ill health, injustice, climate change are all things that we must face and we must address as a society. But top-down interventions are not going to be able to solve these things alone. And at the Fore, we believe that there are thousands of innovative local solutions out there, which are many of them scalable, and they can be a part of the solution to these global challenges. So our mission is to break down the barriers that these small charities and social enterprises face in terms of accessing funding and skills, and help them reach their potential and have the impact that our society needs. So why are we here this afternoon? Well, we are here with Yaw Nsarkoh. We're delighted to welcome you. Thank you very much for joining us. Because we had the pleasure to be introduced to Yaw through one of our board members, Mary Boache, and we're very inspired by Yaw and everything that he has done and everything that he believes and everything that he teaches. Yaw's been extremely senior at Unilever has been at Unilever for 30 years, and was had ended his role, his time at Unilever as an executive vice president of global markets, which basically means he was almost in charge of the whole business. I think it's fair to say. For those of you that don't know, I think most of you probably do, Unilever is one of the largest businesses in the world. It's got 60 billion turnover and works across global markets. And now spent a lot of his earlier time working in markets across Africa. So he's got a huge amount of experience. He's now London-based. He has 2 children at the university in the UK, and is doing a range of non-executive and executive roles. And we are thrilled that he is also mentoring one of our fantastic social enterprises, Restart Enterprises, Pauline Miller-Brown, who I can see is with us this afternoon. But the reason why we invited Yaw to come and give this talk is because the conversations that we have had with him, and we know Pauline has had with him, are conversations that we felt it could be really useful to people on a much broader sense. So Yaw is an expert at making the most of networks and of unlocking potential. And he's a coach and a mentor these days as well. And we wanted to give you the chance to hear his wisdom and to have a chance to ask him questions yourself and understand a bit more about how he has used and inspired others to use the people that they know and the experiences they have to further their goals. So let me pass you across to Yaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Rose. Good afternoon to everybody. Great to see you all. And I don't know I know many people are dialing from places also not in the UK. So if it's morning or evening in your place, good morning to you, good evening to you as well. I think we will begin, Kelly, with the video. Mary Rose made a very generous introduction of me, so I don't want to add anything to that. There's enough pressure on me from what she said. so let's get going.
No, I've actually always found something to be very true, which is most people don't get those experiences because they never ask. I've never found anybody that didn't want to help me if I asked them for help. I always call them up. I called up, this will date me, but I called up Bill Hewlett when I was 12 years old, and he lived in Palo Alto. His number was still in the phone book. And he answered the phone himself. He said, yes. I said, hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I'm 12 years old. I'm a student in high school, and I want to build a frequency counter. And I was wondering if you had any spare parts I could have. And he laughed, and he gave me the spare parts to build this frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer in Hewlett-Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on frequency counters. He got me a job in the place that built them. And I was in heaven. And I've never found anyone who said no or hung up the phone when I called. I just asked. And when people ask me, I try to be as responsive, to pay that debt of gratitude back. Most people never pick up the phone and call. Most people never ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. You gotta act, and you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to crash and burn, with people on the phone, with starting a company, with whatever. If you're afraid of failing, you won't get very far.
Thank you very much. Okay, super. Thank you very much. There is a way in which in 1.5 minutes, Jobs has said all that I have to say, but Mary Rose still insisted that she wanted to hear my voice, so I will try to say something more. But first, thank you very much for coming. I have, for the person who sent the comment that there are visually impaired people on the call, I've taken note, and I usually don't read charts to people, but I will do that, bearing in mind that some people cannot see them. So for those of you who can see, please have some patience if you find that I'm reading some charts. So as you know, you are here today to have a discussion about unleashing the power of your network, and that's what we'll be talking about. I've already been introduced. I will try to follow this agenda, again, because I'm aware some people can't read it. Be patient with me when I say I'll begin with an attempt at a definition. I'm no academic, so don't expect academic stimulus from me. But my sense of what networking is, what the rationale is, the impact of technology today, a little bit of a discussion around business as a complex adaptive system, the fact that we live in a multi-stakeholder approach, and it imposes its own challenges on business leaders today. And then a few ideas about building networks, the competitive nature of the world, the need to stand for something, have a point of view in this world, and the reason why we should sometimes not be afraid to try. We make mistakes, but so what? And Mary Rose told me once when I was having a chat with her, actually about Pauline, and I was saying just how wonderful a person she is and how great it is to meet people like that. And she said to me, when you're in places like the Fore, you do meet many, many good people like that. So you're constantly reminded about the positive side of humanity. I can tell you it's not like that for everybody. So you're very fortunate if you're in a sector where that happens. So the first thing I would like to say, and I have promised to do a little bit of reading so that everybody can follow, is a network is a group of people who exchange information, contacts, and experience for professional or social purposes, and that's taken from the Oxford Dictionary. All I really meant to say on this chart, if everybody could have seen it, is to say, keep in mind that networks exist for a reason. You define that reason, but they exist for a reason. So it's not simply having numbers on your phone or knowing where people live. They are defined by you for some purpose. And what that purpose is up to you. And you are the one who has to nurture it and build it and grow it. And like you do in everything else, sometimes for that purpose, you need to augment the network in some way or the other, then you have to do it. So it's an active management process. It's not a passive thing that is just lying around and you say you have a network because 10 years ago you had a number on your phone that you have never done anything with. I would also like to say from the onset that I believe passionately that it is better to build relationships before you are desperate for them, before you need anything from someone. That is my attitude. I'd much rather reach out to people, get to know them when I don't have to ask them for anything, than wait till I need something before I ask them. That's a principle I'll keep coming back to. So we live in a hyper-complex world. And I don't think I need to speak too much about that. We live in a hyper-complex world. But when you live in a hyper-complex world, every leader needs to amplify their impact to be effective. If you look at the world that we live in, we don't always realize it, but it is geopolitically very complex. We are living through a time when the human race, throughout human history, has never had a nation of more than 1 billion people reaching out credibly, intensely, seriously for development. That has never happened in human history. The present time has two, India and China. That itself, and the rise of Southeast Asia and all other parts, has impacts on geopolitics that have never been experienced in this world before. And therefore, there's a certain way in which the world is in fluidity, is in flux, and that definitely impacts all things that we try to do. I was having a discussion with someone the other day, and he says to me, something happened worldwide. And I said, what do you mean when you say worldwide? When you talk about the hyper-complex world we live in. And I like to point out that you take India, China, and Africa, 2 countries plus 1 continent, you have half of the population of the world. 1.4 billion in India, 1.4 billion in China, 1.2 billion in Africa. And yet, how many times do you hear the expression worldwide, and the people have absolutely no sense of what is happening in India, China, or Africa? We live in a completely different reality from what the world has been in the past. And we need to keep that at the back of our mind. Whether you're working in a small part of the world or you're working globally, these days the world is so interconnected in so many ways, a point that we shall come to later. This is the reason why alliances, coalitions, partnerships, and networks have become essential for operational success in the modern world. No doubt about it, technology has played a huge part in fostering and facilitating what we just spoke about. And as you can see on the chart, again, reading for those who are visually impaired, networking has always been vital. But the advance of technology, transport, and communications has made it much easier than ever before. And sometimes we just have to remind ourselves. I often say to people, until 1992, December, we hadn't even experienced an SMS in this world. And in that year, 1992, there was 1 SMS. And then I think in 1993, there were 3 SMSs. And in this world today, if you count WhatsApp and so on and so forth, 18.7 billion text messages are sent a day, not a year. That gives you a sense of the change in the landscape and what it has facilitated. I was reading a book by Len Scott recently, and there was one bit in it that really struck me. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Nikita Khrushchev from the Kremlin needed to speak to Jack Fitzgerald Kennedy in the White House, and they needed to get the message with extreme rapidity. I mean, you're talking about perhaps the 2 most powerful men in the world, needing to get a message from Moscow to Washington. It took 12 hours, and the world was in celebration that it had taken 12 hours to get a message from Nikita Khrushchev to Jack Kennedy. You can imagine today's reality, 12 seconds, and we're already impatient that it has taken too long. So that is the extent to which technology has changed, communications has changed. I would often add that I used to be very happy with a 5-week cycle of writing a letter to my mother in Canada in those days and she replying. And today you can't wait. The world has just changed. And with that has come the ability to scrutinize, go onto LinkedIn, find out about people, Google, ChatGPT. So you have a much more transparent and real-time world than we have ever lived in. It comes with its challenges, but it also comes with many, many, many benefits, especially when you talk in the area of networking. Business, as many of you know, I don't want to spend too much time on it, is that now a complex adaptive system. If you're a CEO today, you are managing an end-to-end value chain. It's no longer your four walls. You have to know how to link up with community, with governments, with competitors, with regulators, in order that you secure the long-term health of the society. And that is what we call the multi-stakeholder approach. Those who came before us, they could sometimes be satisfied to simply focus on their shareholder. And if they gave their shareholder a return at the end of every period, that was okay. But the world we live in today places much more, thankfully, much more accountability on businesses, much more accountability on social enterprises, much more accountability on everyone else, which means that if you're going to thrive, you have to learn to manage several stakeholder axes simultaneously. And that is the ever-changing reality for CEOs. The CEOs of today, of the modern era, are doing something that their predecessors could hardly even dream of doing. And so if you're leading businesses today, or you're leading anything else today, and you think that you can go it alone, you really have lost your way. The perma-crisis condition, as people call it, there's always something happening in the world today. When COVID was over, we thought one crisis was over, Ukraine war. When that is gone, something else will come up. It means that you need people who are reflective. They take time, they sit back. They are able to look at the world and say to themselves, where do we think it will go? And if you are going to be forever busy, forever keeping yourself preoccupied trying to do everything, you simply cannot be a reflective practitioner. You end up being what some people say, you work in the forest, but not on the forest. So again, that cements the need for networking and for networks and for partnerships and all of that. Now, I'll just say a few things about some of the things that I think are useful to do. First is it requires effort, like everything good in this world. My adopted Chinese brother said to me, everything that is good in this world that endures cannot come without hard work. So you have to make the time and the effort and use the range of tools and techniques that are available to you these days. You have WhatsApp, you have social media, you have so many things. So making the time doesn't mean that you're traveling around the world going to see people all the time. It sometimes means that you send a one-line text to someone to check up on something or to express an interest in something or the other. But you do have to make the quality time. It is also very important that you have the ability to frame the context into win-win. Too many people I speak to on networking, and the first thing that they say to me is, oh, how can I get this person to do this for me or get that person to do things for this thing for me? My suggestion is always start from what you can do for others, how you can add value to people. And if you can get that, then your request becomes a win-win situation. And networks and partnerships, in my view, work best when everybody benefits along. That's the whole principle of the multi-stakeholder approach. You try for all stakeholders to benefit. I would, from my own experience, say when people help you, make sure you acknowledge them. Whatever it's possible to say that is good about people publicly, say it. Because whatever we say as human beings, we do like to be acknowledged. We do like to be recognized for what we do. And I just believe, maybe it's very basic, but I just believe that people who are generous to others in terms of acknowledging what they do, they too, good things come to them. That's just the way that I see it. It's very useful to be what I call a connecting node, a connector. So not only do you know how to network for yourself, but you also know how to connect networks so that when you join a network, it amplifies the value and worth of the network because you bring certain connections, intra-network, inter-network. You're able to spot where bilateral opportunities exist. When you're like that, you generally tend to be wanted by other people's networks, and your own network grows and strengthens. Another thing that I hear many people talk about when you speak to them about networking is that they are afraid to let go. What if people don't do it to your standard of excellence? And I often say human beings have been to the moon and back. And what is it that we do in our businesses that we think that someone else will not be able to do if we are not there? And the proverbial metaphorical question, if a bus knocked us down, what then happens to our business or our social enterprise? It will carry on. So you're going to have to trust, you're going to have to let go a little bit, and that's what networking is about. Networking, it gives you opportunities to allow some people who know how to do certain things better than you to do it for you. And you too can do things that they do better for them. And in that way, everybody gets more efficient and more effective. What you heard Jobs talking about, he used different words, but essentially that's what he was saying. There are too many people who, in my view, it's a dysfunctional kind of humility. They are too coy to ask for help. They're afraid of rejection. What if the person turns me down? But if you're going to be a proper networker, in my view, you need to show some vulnerability and some humility. Ask for it. Get help when you need help. You can't do everything yourself. And you will find, as Stephen Covey said, those who pause and sharpen the axe, they fell the tree faster. So it's something that I will really encourage all of you. Show vulnerability, show humility, get help, ask, and you will get it. I think that's the point that Jobs was making abundantly. I'll tell a quick story because I'm coming to the end of what I said, and we open it up for the more interesting session, which is always the Q&A. Life is competitive. Too many times we forget that as individuals and in whatever unit of society, all the way to the nation state. We forget that life is competitive. It's not just waiting for when you are ready to do what you want to do. And those who have studied, Didier Drogba should be very well known in these circles for those who follow the EPL, but he also was an African star of repute, Chelsea striker, quite well known. He wrote an autobiography, which I found very, very, very seminal, given that he was a sportsman. Some of the lessons that he spoke about for leadership were very striking. But one of them, which stuck with me, was that Drogba says, if you are a world-class striker, when you go onto the pitch, the first thing you must remember is that there are 11 opposing players whose primary responsibility, other than scoring themselves, is to stop you from scoring. They are there to stop you from what is your job description, what is your objective. Therefore, the chances that you get will not be many. The few you get, you must take them. Networking is also a bit like that. To get high quality networks, high quality people into your networks is not always going to be easy. Life is competitive, so take the opportunities when they come. They will be few and far in between, but take them when they come. Stand for something. I think that it should be a fairly simple concept in the construct of leadership. Take the risk, take a point of view about the world, dare to go for something in this world, to believe in something, and have the integrity to follow it. So that even in networks, while you're willing to work for the network, you still protect your individuality and you have a point of view and you pursue it with integrity. You will find that people generally reward guys who they can understand. They know what they stand for, and it helps in the context of networks. Make mistakes, I said. Too many of us, we're afraid to live, we are afraid to die, we're afraid to do anything. But at the end of the day, nobody died because he made a mistake, as far as I know, in the context of business. My view is that when you make a mistake, you must first acknowledge it, face it, confront it, that you have made a mistake. The second thing is that you must take the lessons and the learning. And the third and most vital and important is that you must move on. Forgive yourself and move on. Move on if you know that you did your reasonable best. And the context of networking is like that. Even if you give it your best, you will sometimes make some mistakes here and there. But go through those three phases that I just spoke about. A, acknowledge that you made the mistake. B, take the learning and the lessons. Don't let a mistake go waste. Learn from it so that you become a better person. And C, move on. Move on. Forgive yourself and move on. Don't let it haunt you and destroy you. I like this quote from Viktor Frankl very, very, very much, because we are all in doubt when it comes to needing to be a bit vulnerable when it comes to people, expose ourselves to them and so on. We are never sure whether we are doing the right thing when you bring people into your space. But Frankl says, we who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I'll read that again. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. The essence of that is that there are still some good people, even in a world where the news is filled with so much pain and betrayal. And we must just dare to find them, dare to risk, and we will be rewarded in our networks for doing so. Yes, we are afraid of failure. Yes, we are afraid of hurt. Yes, we are afraid of betrayal. But remember, only when we are no longer afraid do we begin to live. So never fear, never fear, never fear. Let go of your fears and reach out, dare to be courageous, and fortune will reward the brave. Thank you very much. That's where I'd like to leave it for now, and we can go into question time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was incredibly inspiring. And we've got time for questions. We wanted to give people the opportunity to ask your thoughts. Is there, please either feel free to put questions in the chat or else come on, take yourself off mute, and please do come on camera, anybody who would like to ask a question. But I think I will kick off with the first question now, which is, I'd be really interested to understand what you see as being, or if there is a difference in building networks that you've noticed when you're working in a business situation or when you're working in a charitable and social enterprise philanthropic situation.
I will say essentially that they are the same in terms of the process by which you use them. What you're trying to do in both situations is to find out where your goals and your interests overlap, so that you can, in that spirit, work out a way where you collaborate in a win-win mode. Now, in business, sometimes some people are unable to make the link to that. At the end of the day, I believe in the causality that business must first focus on doing what is right for society and then get rewarded. Now, if you look at it that way, then there's not that much of a difference between business and social enterprises. But of course, not everybody agrees with me. The first and most important thing of a business is to act to secure the long-term health of society. Without society, there is no business. So I'm very surprised that this is a little bit of a debate. So if you belong to that school where you believe that the shareholder comes first, then of course there's going to be a difference between you and social enterprises, because obviously when you network, you're thinking first about the primary responsibility of the shareholder. But if, like me, you believe that what you are first there for is to seek the long-term health of society, and that if you do that well, there's a return, then I don't see why there should be a difference.
Do we have questions? Who would like to ask a question from the floor? So, Pauline, thank you.
It's actually no, I'd put in the chat that every time that Yaw speaks, I'm left inspired. I needed this because of a meeting that I need to have, and a few things that jumped out of me was about ask, act, and fail, and be willing to fail. Sometimes I am not always as gutsy as I need to be to ask, and I will pull back. And so everything's just resonated for me, because currently there's a situation that I need to deal with. And I was just busy writing notes because it's given me that confidence. Never fail, never fear. That's just jumped out at me, that, you know, fear, sometimes it doesn't protect you. It stops you from doing what needs to be done. And that's what I'm taking away. Never fear. And I'm going into that meeting on Monday with nothing to lose, and I will not fear. Thank you. It might not seem like, sometimes it's the simple things. I will not fear.
No, and I would like everyone else, thank you very much for that intervention, Pauline. And I'd like everyone else, if you forget everything else I said, that's the one thing that I'd like you to take away. Never fear, never fear.
I think it's particularly relevant actually at the moment to a lot of social entrepreneurs and leaders of charities, in that, you know, times are really very tough, and you can feel very isolated. So having the courage to reach out and ask for help and to connect with people in your network who might be able to support you, I think is something that we all need to really take to heart and act upon. So yeah, good luck, Pauline, with your meetings. Hope they go well. Have we got anybody else? Somebody has just joined. Please do ask a question.
Hi, Yaw. Thank you so much for that talk. That was absolutely brilliant and very inspiring. And I think just what we need on a Friday afternoon after a heavy week. And also, like Pauline, I've been trying to get into networking, and, you know, it's dealing with that fear. I think what I would add to that is there's a saying that when fear knocks at the door, let faith be your answer. And to just walk in there with faith that, you know, that you can do the best that you can, and that's absolutely fine. The question that I've got is about, you said that life is competitive, and, you know, we need to accept that and address that. But for me, with networking, it's that tension between competition and collaboration. And I was just wondering, because networking is about collaboration. It's about meeting up with other people, sharing things, sharing networks, sharing skills, sharing experiences, resources, and so on. So how do you balance that with competition? Because that's what I found throughout my career, is that there is that tension between competition and collaboration. And I don't know what the answer is, but sometimes you kind of get in there, you're partway through, and you think, actually, this is not a collaborative relationship that's developing here, it's a competitive one. So yeah, I was just wondering about your thoughts and reflections on that.
Well, thank you very much. Iabo, have I pronounced the name right?
Yeah, Yabo, yeah.
Iabo,
yeah,
no,
we're neighbors, aren't we?
yeah. I lived in Nigeria for 6 years, so
Oh,
I'm
fantastic.
actually quite Nigerian.
Okay, very good.
I think that it's a fantastic question. And I know that I was saying to someone, I was commenting on an article that someone had written, and I said to her, outstanding article, but towards the end, I think you spoil it because you go into the construct that is taught in a lot of Western thinking of being binary. I said too many times, the 2x2 matrix is the way that we think about the world. But interestingly, there are many parts of the world where they don't look at it that way at all. They look at continuums. And in a sense, I'm being unfair because Einstein talked about continuums, and he was from the West as well. And people like Fritjof Capra, Pierluigi Luisi, and so on and so forth shared it. So it's not a marked divide. But the 2x2 matrix is such a feature of intellectual activity and academic discourse in the Western world that sometimes we think everything is something versus something. But when we talk about a competitive world, I see it as both collaborativeness and competitiveness. I mean, when Drogba talks about you need to take your chances, he's talking about it within the context of a team sport. So there's very much collaboration in there.
Yeah.
But the time comes when, as an individual, you have to own up and do what you are required to do. And so, yes, when you talk in the context of networking, you are trying to collaborate. These days, even competitors at the level of industry bodies, dealing with regulators, trying to shape policy and so on and so forth. It's one of the things that you have to learn as a business leader very quickly, that there are spaces in which you are a competitor of your competitor, and there are spaces in which you are collaborators. So you take the Nestle's, the Procter & Gamble's, and the Unilevers of this world, they are fierce competitors in the market. But when they have to deal with governments to get policy, environment to be right, and so on, they come together and they collaborate. So what I meant by that the world was competitive is that you need to recognize that in the delivery of the ultimate goal, your goal may not be another person's goal. And there are scarce resources. It doesn't mean that the path towards that, you cannot collaborate to get, you come together, you collaborate. When I'm talking to younger audiences, I like to use an example that always gets them laughing when the early 20s, because then that's when they're in courtship, getting ready for marriage and so on. And I say, if you come from a monogamous society, one person is going to lead the girl up the aisle. And often it's not the guy who has been walking around smiling and saying, I'm your brother. It's the one who has the courage to move. So while they are a pack of friends and they are collaborating, it's the one who pops the question. And usually when I say that, I then ask the girls, do you know what I'm talking about? And they all go, yeah, we know what you're talking about. So that's the way that the real world is as well. You have to choose your priorities, figure out those who you can build alliances with and move. And you have to keep, as the psychodynamic coaches say, two conflicting ideas in your brain at the same time. How do I collaborate with these people? But I realize also that at some point I become a competitor. So I have to keep those two. There's tension, you said, not contradiction. And the two are not the same.
Thank you. Yeah, we have got time
for,
thank you, Yaw, it's lovely to see you.
You too.
We've got time for one last quick question, if we have one from anybody who would like to, but otherwise, oh no, it actually has just come to 1:45. We would like to thank Yaw very much indeed for such an inspiring talk. We have, if anyone would like to stay on for a little bit longer, we will finish the recording, we will finish the formal part, but please do, we will be very, you'd be very welcome to continue talking. Yaw, for me, I think the most inspiring part of what you've said in many ways, and I think this is so true for people running social enterprises and charities, it was those who pause and sharpen the axe fell the tree faster. Because what I know is really prevalent at the moment is that there is a lot of burnout going on in this sector. So I just want to remind everybody of that and say, you know, this is a man who has achieved enormous amounts in his career, and he is advising you to not only live without fear and to take the first move, but also to pause and to make sure that you have got your strength with you before you move forward. But yeah, thank you to everybody for listening.